In step 2 of adding our indicators to our charts of TradeStation, we will focus on the MBI paint bar, the GAM paint bar, as well as the new trend model and extreme histogram. Each of these is placed over price in the top subgraph. Prior to adding any additional indicators, from our step 1 we added a show me study, which is fine. However, there are times with the ATR we end up with the dots below and or above where the actual price is. So there are a few housekeeping items we want to take care of on a chart, and in TradeStation we just right click, format symbol, and in this particular case we want to go to our subgraph margins, and I select 15% for both top and bottom. And what this is going to do when I press OK, it leaves a range above and a below where price is, and this makes it much easier to see our individual indicators and or any numeric information that pops up. Next, you'll notice that you see white candlesticks in this particular case. We also then right click, and this time we can go to style, and I've selected candlestick with trend. You can just select regular candlestick. I typically will go to the color of a neutral gray, and the reason being not black, this will allow the images to show up. And so after clicking each of them and converting them to gray, select OK, and voila, you have. The reason being is that when we insert our paint bar studies, and those are the studies that will give us our trend model, painting it green and red, as well as our MBI and GAM indicators. So we then are ready at this particular point to go ahead and install an indicator. So we would click Insert Analysis Technique. We will select a paint bar in this particular case, and here we will select MBI. And the reason we want to select the MBI and GAM first is because they need to have priority on our chart listing to show up. Now, you're not going to recognize them. This happens to be an MBI here. We can click it, and in the window graph it will say MBI. When we put our new trend model on, we will then have our color. The next one we will want to select will be Insert Analysis Technique, and we'll want to put in our GAM. And by doing these two first, and we just select OK, we don't need to change any of the inputs that come with them, this will allow us then to have our yellow and our white candles that appear for both of those. And if we then go ahead and click Format Analysis Techniques, we can see on our chart that we had originally put in the ratio hawk, and now we have our GAM and MBI. And it's important to have these two at the top from a status standpoint as far as the way the computer reads them for placing them on our chart. So our next one clearly will be, we'll insert Analysis Technique, and we will want to put in our new trend model, which will color our candles. And for that we don't need to do anything with our inputs, the general location. The reason this has a 1 here would be whether or not you have more than one symbol attached to it, and we're not going into any of those details. So there we click it, and voila, now you have your trend model with your MBI and GAM, and your chart begins to take some color distinction. And this will then allow us to begin to add subgraphs or additional indicators. Now, often you'll see on my charts that we have the extreme histogram. So for that, we would just merely click Insert Analysis Technique, and that happens to be an indicator. So we would have to go to the indicators, and in this particular case we want to look for our extreme histogram. So we would slow down, and here we have extreme histogram. Now for our extreme histogram, let's go ahead and just put it onto a chart. So I'm just going to select OK. You'll see what happens. Well, that's clearly not what we want to take place, and this is what will happen when you add an indicator directly to the chart. It'll put it in the axis of the price, and depending on how it's displayed, it will give you this very odd appearance. So to adjust it, we need to format it. And to format it, we're just going to right click, Format Extreme Histogram. And you can start with the generals, gives the name of it, inputs if there are any values to change. If you want to enable an alert, you merely click it, and you can select, alert once, and based on whatever criteria. This isn't an indicator where we need that, but we do need to do something here. And in our differential, which is the reading line For our extreme histogram, we actually want to make it a histogram. And you can select the depth of the line width, and I leave it at the neutral point. But if we select OK here, you'll see a change. Well, now we have our histogram. Unfortunately, it's still clogging up price quite dramatically. So we go back to our format, and we solve that issue, not in color, because you won't be able to change the color of the differential because those are default setted within the program. You would go to scaling, and where it says same axis as underlying, we're going to select it, and we're going to click no axis. This way it will float independent of price in the middle of our chart. And then the subgraph 1 meaning price. You can click down that and it will give you a series of them. But for demonstration purposes, we'll go ahead and put it in its own window by selecting number 2. Now this is going to put it below price. And if we select OK, you can see that now you have your extreme histogram in its own window. And I always recommend, if I slide the chart over slightly here, you can right click this area and select check mark, and the values will appear on the side of the axis. This would be a right axis move. But now typically we leave that unchecked, and for us, if we just wanted to slide this back up into here, it moves back into price. However, we have to go back to our axis and we have to pick no axis for it, leaving it in subgraph 1, and there, this is what you would normally see on one of our regular charts as it pertains to the extreme histogram. So in our additional videos, we will go through all of the subgraphs, but this is typically what one of my charts will look like as far as handling the paint bar studies along with the extreme histogram. Everything else will be in subgraphs. And please see that in step number 3.